Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the Modern Cyberwar 2018 Threats. We will be joined here by Doug from LambTech and Mark from SONICWALL as your experts today in talking to us about the cyber war that faces us. There is a handout that you can download in your area on the side of your controls of when you signed into the webinar. A few housekeeping items. We've muted everybody so we don't have any background noises per se. There is that chat window that I just talked about that you can type in a question, and we will interrupt our presenter at that time at a certain break and present your question out with an answer. And again, there is in that chat window over there also another section for handouts where we have provided the entire threat outlook report from SONICWALL that Mark will be talking about today. If there is a poll or any questions, we look forward to the interaction. The speakers you've got some very knowledgeable speakers on the threats that are out there today and can help you get through them. And contact information will be provided at the end of this webinar when I rejoin. After the webinar is over, we will provide an email with a link that you can listen to the recording of the webinar again, or provide it to somebody else that you might find it beneficial to. So at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Doug. Doug is the account manager and outward-facing person that you'll see out at events and all over the place for LambTech. So Doug, welcome, and maybe you can just take us through a little bit about LambTech.
All right, thank you, Pete, and good morning. As Pete said, I am Doug Sokolowski with LambTech. I'm an account manager here, and we welcome you and thank you for your time on today's webinar. Give you a little bit of a history, as Pete talked about, information about LambTech. We were founded by Robert Lamb in 1999 in Sedalia. Robert still serves as our owner today, and in fact, he's got the office right next to me, so we see him on a daily basis. We provide managed services for businesses and organizations, and we have a core coverage area that we cover and span anywhere from Kansas City to Columbia, and then from the Brunswick area down to Springfield. However, we do service several other states and regions along with that for supporting locations. Now, LambTech, we align our IT solutions with your growth initiatives in mind, so it's very important for us to get to know your business, not just the tech side, but our goal is to take care of your technology so you can focus on your day-to-day business and also just stop expanding some of your issues and problems. Now, we do offer some managed services to maintain your security, so we do things like maintaining your security as a whole. We also offer help desk support, consulting, and then data recovery and backup services. So that is all aligned for you. I know that we have several that are joining us today that are our current clients, and we do appreciate your partnership. And we do believe that everyone today is going to be learning more about protecting your business and how we can assist you overall. For those that are our clients, if you have questions on what you learned today and how it works with your specific agreement with us, we do invite you to reach out to us after the webinar is complete so we can talk about how this actually deals with your individual agreement. So without further ado, today we're going to be focusing in on security, as Pete talked about, with one of our longtime partners, SONICWALL. Here today, we have our territory account manager, Mark Whitebrock, and I believe also Troy Ryan is going to be joining us today. Mark?
Thanks for the introduction. Again, this is Mark Whitebrock, territory account manager for SONICWALL, covering Missouri and Kansas, also along Troy Ryan, as indicated. And what we have up on the slide today, more speed, less fear, and in the world that exists out there within within security, this can change at a very, very fast pace. So the fact that you are secure and working with LambTech is definitely going to be good for your overall security posture and status. So we'll go into the next slide and go to where we're going to be headed on this journey today. So for the agenda today, we're going to take a look at the threat. We're going to go over the 2018 SONICWALL Cyber Threat Report as we see it from a SONICWALL perspective. Also, too, breaking the cycle that currently exists out there in the security world, and then looking inward as to what's going on. So as this slide builds out the threats that exist out there, I don't think I have to explain to anyone that's listening today that threats are out there on a regular basis. It could be even within the nanoseconds that exist as far as the threats exist out there on the threat landscape. These are landscape threats that we hear about by way of the media. These are attacks that we hear about besides the media, but more all in all, these threats are affecting your business and businesses that exist out there as well too. And the need for having more of a security posture is good as we're moving forward. If we can build out that slide a little bit more. And we may have to go to the next slide. There we go. So Yahoo data breach, and then the next slide we talk about the IRS and Equifax and cybersecurity incident. And as we know, most recently here, we've had, there was some information that was brought to everyone's attention by way of Panera and what was going on with their data infrastructure, and also Delta Airlines, and then the list just keeps on growing. And then you never know, by the end of this call, there could be something new that exists out there too. So now we move on to the next slide. And we take a look at the 2018 Cybersecurity Threat Report and how, you know, it is definitely a global cyber arms race. And to me, when we take a look at the security race, we talk about, you know, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when and to what degree. And every company or every business out there, you have to decide, okay, when is the compelling event going to happen to you? And no one ever knows when that compelling event is going to happen. So therefore, we have to take a stance on where we are from the security aspect. Now we move into what the actual threat report is actually going to be defining, talking to you about. And then I think I can go ahead and say too that at the end of this presentation, and you may have received it already, but you know, you do have access to the full 2018 Cybersecurity Threat Report offered by SONICWALL for your viewing enjoyment to find out where, you know, the stats are from being involved with security and where you don't want to be as far as being involved with security. Next slide. All right, so we take a look at the key threat reports here. I'm going to go across the board and just talk about each one of these really quick, and then I'm going to let Troy drill down into each one of them and how they represent the businesses that are part of this. So we're going to take a look a little bit at ransomware decline, how law enforcement was involved, the use of SSL TLS, and then malware cocktails and the threats that as they exist. And we're waiting. Troy, are you with us? And I think Troy may be trying to get unmuted based on joining the webinar. So while we're waiting on Troy, I'll just go ahead and take a look at what we have going on here from the state of the industry. So we take a look at the vulnerabilities and how these exposures have related to what's going on. So the malware bounces back, and we take a look at 2015, 2016, and 2017, and how we're looking at what's going on from that perspective and where it ties in to the security report. And next slide, please. So security industry advances. We take a look at ransomware and the decline of ransomware. So we take a look at the decline. Yes, ransomware has declined, but the variances and how that ransomware is still being enabled, if you have out there, has a very sharp contrast to the overall effectiveness of the ransomware as it relates across the industry as a whole. We take a look at SSL TLS encryption. We know now that this number keeps on increasing. If we take a look at Google and their hopes of making sure that everyone has a secure connection, this is good, but if that secure connection going through that tunnel to the end device that you're going to does not have all their ducks in a row from a security perspective, then you're going to be, you could be a sitting duck as far as it goes to having a threat on your network. And there lies the issue that we need to actually inspect that SSL traffic. Now we take a look at the exploit kits. The exploit kits, they're getting better, and also too, they're getting more along the line of being able to anyone can use the exploit kit. There we go.
Okay, good. I'm here.
Now we have Troy, so I'm going to turn it over to Troy to add to about what I've been talking about, and then and so again, Troy, if you were following me, we were talking about ransomware.
Sure. Yep.
SSL.
Yeah. So we saw a 72% year-over-year decline in ransomware attacks from 2016 to 2017. America was attacked the most with 40% of all ransomware attacks, followed closely by Europe at 37%. The next bullet there, use of TLS encryption, 68% of all internet traffic is now SSL TLS encrypted. Total amount of SSL TLS increased by 24% over that same period. Exploit kits, zero Adobe Flash vulnerabilities were discovered in 2017, so that helped. Browser vendor dropping Flash support obviously helped as well. Microsoft Edge attacks grew by 13%, while Office products grew by 4%. So obviously, as we see a downturn in one vector of attack, we will see an upturn in others, right? So they're gonna target what's easiest. Law enforcement, there were some key arrests that disrupted the malware supply chains. 5 Romanian hackers accused of operating the CTV Locker ransomware. The security researcher, this was interesting, the security researcher that halted the WannaCry, he found basically the key to turn that off, was arrested allegedly for authoring a banking Trojan called Kronos.
We can go to the next slide. There we go. Thanks.
So while the number of ransomware attacks declined from 2016 to 2017, the number of variants increased by 101%. So what that means is there's less people doing it, but more variants or more different copies of, so to speak, of those attacks happening. So what they've determined is, rather than attacking more, being unique is more important to them now. Next. So you can see in 2015 there was 424 unique ransomware signatures. Last year was 1,400, and I'm sorry, 2016 was 1,400. Last year was 2,850. That's the increase in the variants. So the reason for the variant increase, obviously, is we provide security on what we know, and a lot of that is signature-based or even a behavioral-based antivirus and threat technology. So in order to get into our networks, they're having to increase the randomness or the uniqueness of the ransomware variants. Next. As stated, the SSL TLS usage increased. It's up 68%, 24% increase over the previous year. Next. Exploit kit success declined Again, you can see a graph here of where they were in 2016 versus 2017. Obviously, with the increased adoption of Microsoft Edge over Internet Explorer, you'll see an increase in attack vector there, while you see a corresponding decrease in Internet Explorer. Apple TV is kind of a new attack variant. Again, with the exposure of vulnerabilities in products, you can see a large jump in the number of attacks on a device based on those. Next. Here's some of the cybercrime arrests of 2017. Again, let's see, the WannaCry researcher down there. Which one was he there? Nope, he's not listed on there. Oh, Kronos banking Trojan. Yeah, Marcus Hutchins. He was the guy who found the kill switch for WannaCry. Yeah, he was arrested for the Kronos banking Trojan. Next. Unique types of ransomware. Again, 101% increase in variants. One of 250 attacks identified as a new ransomware variant. 480 new malicious files identified and examined every day. In the SSL/TLS encryption, nearly 5% of file-based malware propagation attempts to use SSL/TLS encryption. So not only are they using that encrypted tunnel to deliver malware now, they're establishing encrypted tunnels to report back out. And the reason for that is obviously one of the things that we do is we do a botnet scanning on our firewalls. Well, if we can't inspect that traffic and we can't see where it's going, then we can't apply botnet security and other features. An average organization will see more than 900 file-based encrypted attacks per year. Malware cocktails, exploit kits, repurposing old code for new gains. Again, it's kind of the variants. They're taking different pieces and parts of different exploit kits, and they're putting them together to form a new variant called a malware cocktail. Terror EK was based on code stolen from both RIG and Sundown exploit kits. Nebula exploit kit, likely a variant of Sundown exploit kit, and spread the Diamond Fox and Ramnet malware. And then, of course, the newest area, battleground, so to speak, would be processor threats and the Internet of Things. So Meltdown and Spectre, two that hit the news this year, targets modern processor vulnerabilities to steal sensitive data inside protected memory space. So even heuristic-based antivirus at the endpoint has issues scanning and detecting malicious code in encrypted files. And a lot of times that execution only happens in memory in the processor. There's no behavior-based files written. There's no attacks or attempts to connect to internal or external networks. There's no attempts to write registry entries. It only loads in memory and executes in memory. Memory regions are the next key battlegrounds. Next. So again, nearly all 5% of all malware propagation attempted to use TLS encryption. That's why if you're not doing inspection of encrypted traffic, it's something that you need to consider. All that encrypted traffic can be passed in malware, can be passed in command and control to botnet servers. You need to be able to decrypt, inspect, and apply all your security services to that traffic in order to have, that layered security approach that covers all your bases. Next. Again, we talked about the rise of ransomware cocktails. They're taking bits and pieces and making new variants out of those. So even if they're not writing new code, they're finding ways to use old code to revitalize that same attack. Next. and of course the processor threats. One thing I did mention in the previous slides was the Internet of Things. One of the biggest challenges for the Internet of Things is when they've developed these refrigerators, your ceiling fan controllers, your barbecue pits, your washing machine, all these things, your DVRs that are connected to your IP network, for your security cameras, all these Internet of Things, when they were first developed, nobody considered them being a security risk. So they didn't plan for patching, updating, vulnerability fixes for those things. They're a one and done. There's very rarely a way to even update firmware on a lot of these Internet of Things. The newer products coming out on the market, the voice activated like Alexis and those types of products, that has been at least considered now, and there is a way to patch vulnerabilities for those. But a lot of the non-IT focused devices that we're adding to our networks were never built to be able to be upgraded and patched. So, next. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, Troy, I just want to pause here so I want to mention that we are talking about this 2018 cyber threat report from the SONICWALL side and how we see it from the industry. But there are other industry-specific reports very similar to these. IBM has a workforce one that's out there. Verizon has the data breach investigative report where they actually talk about data that was compromised. HP has the DB Labs report. So there are other reports very similar to the SONICWALL report, and I would recommend that everyone who's listening look at these other reports so you can have a good baseline to help you with your industry. And then, again, also have that conversation with the LAMTech folks as you're securing your industry. So now we look into breaking the malware cycle. So we've taken a look at what's going on from, the threat landscape. Now the question is what do we do about it? Okay, so as Troy was speaking of, only 5% of the firewalls out there are actually looking into that SSL traffic right now. So if we take a look at the cycle, so now we go to the next slide and we take a look at where we're at here. So we go out to visit a page and then we click and then we come back again, and then the exploit comes and we click again, and then it heads out to the malware request and we click and come back again. And then now we have the malware, and now we're at a point, we're clicking again, and we're looking at, okay, where do we handle and take a look at this? So if we build the slide out next, we can see it that with page visit, we can do UR filtering to take a look at, okay, do we know certain sites that we don't want to go to? Okay, so we can use that filtering then to say, okay, these are sites that we don't want to visit. Therefore, that's going to limit our amount of risk as to what's going on. We next, and we take a look at, where we are from intrusion prevention, intrusion detection perspective on the exploit. So depending on the sites that you did visit, now if that exploit's coming back, IPS, IDS engines are looking at that saying, you know what, we don't really think that this should be going on, so it's not going to be allowed and to be able to come back into the network. Next. And we take a look at now from the malware side of the house, we take a look at anti-spyware, anti-malware, and the cloud antivirus, and also the sandboxing engines to complete what's going on from an inspection of trying to break that malware cycle. Next. So now we add into the inspection of SSL traffic. So as you can see here, we've had the UR filtering, we've had IDS, IPS, and all the different engines that make up the next generation firewall. But if we take a look at specifically DPI for SSL decryption, now we have to sit there and break every single packet, put every single packet back together again, and this causes the firewall to do some very heavy lifting. But this is absolutely as what is needed now, because unless we're actually inspecting that traffic, we're trusting every site that we're going to. And I don't believe from our businesses that we should trust any of the sites unless, in fact, we know that they've done a good job. And that could be that you trust what they're doing on that side. Next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. So why organizations are not encrypting or not inspecting their traffic? That is because of what I was just referencing as far as the high rate of which the processor actually, or the whole firewall has to do to inspect the traffic. Again, this may be that you have an older firewall. It could be, it could be 5 years old. It could be older than 5 years old, and just because I put in a firewall doesn't mean that you're protected. So again, another reason to have a discussion with LambTech as it relates to what's going on from your business and how you can be at the forefront from having all these checks in from a next-gen firewall perspective.
All right. Just to explain what has to happen in order for this to work is obviously the client makes a connection to a web server to establish that SSL connection. That's an encrypted encrypted tunnel to pass traffic, right? So in order for us to inspect that traffic, when it goes through the firewall, it's encrypted. We can't inspect it. So in order for us to inspect that traffic, what we have to do is we have to have the firewall has to intercept that SSL handshake. It has to terminate that between the client and the firewall. The firewall then turns around and creates another encrypted connection to the intended web server. So you have two encrypted tunnels, one between the client firewall, one between the firewall and the web server. And now in the middle, it's unencrypted traffic. That's where you can apply all the security services, the gateway antivirus, the IPS, IDS, all those things, and actually see what's in that traffic, and then make a determination on whether to allow or block that traffic. Now that works for content filtering also, that works for antivirus, that works for all those services. So there's no security hole because it's encrypted on both sides of the firewall. There is a bit of a privacy concern in there because now you can inspect all that traffic, including traffic that maybe you shouldn't or don't want to inspect. A little privacy concern, right? Healthcare data, financial data, those kinds of things. The firewall can be configured to exclude certain types of data and exclude certain sites. It's fully configurable to do that. So, you can give your users assurance that, the sites that need to be encrypted or the privacy should be protected, you can configure it that way. Next.
So now, as we take a look at what we're talking about, and I'll hit next slide here because we are talking about the gateway antivirus, intrusion prevention, and these are all the different engines that actually make up the next generation firewall and your protection against the malware threats, and including the zero-day threats that exist out there too. Next. Next slide. There we go. All right, so now we can take a look at the real-time engines that exist, and then also to where we are from having all these part of the next generation firewall. Next slide. All right, so as we now will dig in a little bit deeper now, and I'll let Troy after I speak. So we take a look at our sandboxing engine. We've also coupled with Last Line and VMRay to have the three sandboxing engines, and then I'll let Troy speak to you of our latest sandboxing engine as it relates to memory.
Yeah, so what we have is on the SONICWALL side, we have what we refer to as Capture. Capture is our zero-day threat assessment sandboxing technology. What it does is the gateway antivirus that's already running on a firewall will scan it through the signatures that the firewall knows about to determine whether the file is malicious. If it passes the signature-based virus scanning, but looks malicious or looks like it's possibly malicious, it's not from a trusted domain or trusted site, it has some embedded code, a whole list of things that it might determine, hey, you know what, I'm going to send this for further analysis. It streams it in real time up to our cloud, where we go through 62 additional virus scanners and now 4 sandboxes. 4 sandboxes. We do Hyper-V, a virtualization, and it processes through all 4 of these sandboxes. We recently added a 4th one. We're the only ones that can do this. We're patenting the technology for doing this. It's called real-time deep memory inspection. This is focused specifically on those types of malware who only run in processor memory space. We have the ability to actually slow that down, watch what it's doing, and to make a determination on whether what's running in memory is malicious or not. And a lot of times that code that runs in memory may only be there for a nanosecond. So it's very hard to catch. It's very hard to see or understand or make a determination on what that is doing in memory. And this all happens in our cloud sandboxing. Once that file has been processed fully throughout the process, and if it makes a determination that file was malicious, it sends the verdict back to the firewall to block that file so that the user doesn't get infected. If it's not malicious, of course, it sends a verdict back to the benign, and it allows the file. So what happens then, of course, is we write a hash. We write that hash back to that firewall. So user number 2 that clicks on that file, we already know what it is now. We already know if it's benign or malicious. The second user and the third user and so on doesn't have to submit that file and wait for that process to complete. Most of the files that we submit to our sandboxing technology will process in less than 2 seconds. Some of them, if they have to go through the entire process, will take up to 2 minutes. The reason for that is these malware writers have gotten smart, and they've inserted delays and breaks in their code so that it may install itself, wait 10 seconds, and then do something malicious. So in order to be able to catch that type of stuff, of course, we have to wait for those delays to process.
Next slide. So now we take a look at the SONICWALL Security Center. Everyone who goes out to SONICWALL.com, you can go through the different tabs at the top and make it out to the Security Center and see what the current threats are. This is just one of the slides. There are several different slides as what's going on real time as we look at the internet traffic that exists. Next slide, please. So important steps to prepare. So to me, we've been talking about the security threat report. We've been talking about how to break the cycle and what needs to be done to be able to do that. But let's take a look at the conversation that you can have. Even you as a customer with your customers that you have, because everyone has someone that they have to support and take care of when it takes a look at the IT network. So let's take a look at that from security to that risk, and then understanding the crown jewels and who is attacking you, and what are those crown jewels and what might they actually be after, and also to rehearse and response and remediation plans. So what is your strategy? Okay, we take a look at the compelling event when it happens. All right, next generation firewall might be a good configuration to have. A layered security approach is always the best to have, but what if that is not 100%? And I don't know if any security configurations are 100% out there. You would also want to have then a good backup plan, and then we've also heard now that you might want to have a Bitcoin account as well added to. So you have 3 different mechanisms there in the event that 1 and 2 do not work for you and you're still wanting to get to your data. Now, if you don't care about your data, then I guess, there may not be a need to even have a security presence that you currently have. But I think everyone wants to be secure with their data that they have. And then now we take a look at the, scheduling the annual big picture security reviews and employee training. Now we say annual, but I might want to tweak this a little bit because I don't think once a year is probably good enough to be able to take a look at the big picture as it relates to reviews. I think it could be on a quarterly basis. It could be on a monthly basis, as depending on what's going on. And the employee training is very, very important because everyone who's connected up to the internet should take on responsibility, even though those of us that are IT specific in what's going on with any business. But everyone should take responsibility, and that comes down to, if you don't know who the password or don't know who the email was that was sent to you, then don't open it. Now we take a look at good cyber hygiene. Patching is extremely important. If you're one or two versions behind on patch, now you're definitely again a setting duck as a target out there, and you don't want to be in that situation. So patch frequently, patch often. Everyone who's putting anything out there is doing those patches for a reason as it relates to security, and then also to password management, privileged account management as well. Again, use that next generation firewall for visibility and control. Decrypt as necessary, inspect as necessary, and also take a look at those incoming files, from the sandboxing perspective, and what's going on there too. So, I mean, this is a good baseline to go with. Any one of your organizations can do what you need to do, talk amongst yourself, and even if it's yourself, to find out what's going on. Next slide, please. Now we take a look at the Capture Labs threat network. As we looked at the network before, we have over 1 million plus sensors out there collecting data, in 200 plus countries, monitoring all the time. We're adding signatures on a daily basis. What's the latest count, Troy, that we're adding on a daily basis?
Well, there's 200,000 plus malware samples that collected daily, yeah.
But I mean, as far as we're adding signatures, between like 40 to 60,000 or more that we're adding?
Yeah, per day, right.
Per day. Next slide, please. So now we take a look at the portfolio that LambTech can have a discussion with you on. So we have our TZs, our NSAs, and our supermasses. So essentially this goes from one person connected up to the internet to several thousand people connected up to the internet, having that next generation firewall capability and sizing these boxes accordingly based on what the needs are for you as a customer. Then we take a look at the services from the firewall threat prevention services that are on top of the firewall, mobile access, and then also management, which LambTech is doing to be able to manage the firewalls that they're supporting for you from that MSP perspective model. Next slide, please. Everyone should download, and I see on our other screen here that you can download the 2018 Cybersecurity Threat Report. Again, we've talked a little bit briefly. Troy's went into a little bit more detail on what's going on particular topics that are in the threat report, but again, take time to read this document. And also too, from a SONICWALL perspective, we did not put on there that it's now the 2018 annual SONICWALL Cyber Threat Report, as we will be again adding more to this and throughout the year. So stay tuned, and LambTech can send that information out to you, or we may have another webinar to get back and talk more about that. Next slide, please. And I guess we are turning it back over to Doug.
Oh, I'm going to take it. This is Pete again.
Pete, sorry.
So, Mark, one of the things that we did is everybody in the audience has the ability to download right out of the handouts tab in their chat window area. There should be a handout section where they can download the 2018 SONICWALL Cyber Threat Report, and we appreciate you guys providing that. I want to reiterate again from LambTech, any questions from existing clients, because we know we've got several existing clients. If you have any questions on your existing agreements, please contact LambTech with your questions, and they'll be more than happy to help you get your answers or sort through any questions that you have. Certainly, anybody that's participated and joined us today, for any follow-up, you can contact Doug. His email and phone number are on there at LambTech, and Doug will certainly act as a go-between to get you to the right people or meet with you to help you navigate what your security needs or requirements might be, or if you just have some questions that you want to ask and go through with. So on that note, on behalf of LambTech and SONICWALL, we want to thank you for joining us today. Mark and Troy, thank you. And we look forward to an update later in the year on these threats and where they've come and gone. And maybe there's some new ones. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And this concludes our webinar for today. Have a wonderful afternoon.